Hello everyone, I'm Nasser Ali Afza, and this presentation is a brief account where we would explore what is scientific writing and how it should be approached. The aim is to enable the listener to become a successful scientific writer. The presentation would cite my personal experiences, my own examples from my own publications, and a reflection where the important points will be discussed regarding the one's journey to become a successful scientific writer. So let's start. In a scientific project, a set of questions are very important because these are the ones which determine everything about that project. For example, why did you do that study? So what is the reason for that study? How did you do that study? So the method, how really would you do that? What did you find in that study? That means when you conducted that study, what outcomes were measured and what were the observations? And ultimately, once you have all the data, where do we stand now? Now, all these questions are the central theme of different parts of the scientific writing. The first one, why did you do that study, is actually something which constitutes the introduction or background of that particular scientific piece of writing. So the introduction or background revolves around that question. And then one synthesizes why that study was started in the first place. The next part, that means how did you do that study, actually comprises of material and methods, which includes the scientific methods adopted to answer the first question, why did you do that study? All right, and then which material was used to do that? And then ultimately, the third question is answered in the third part, which is called results. Results are the data obtained as a result of all the scientific methods adopted, as a result, ultimately, in turn, of all the background which constitutes the scientific reason for that study itself. And ultimately, when you have results, when you have methods, when you have everything already in hand, then you need to compare and contrast and critically appraise the results so that you now understand where do we stand now. And that is called as discussion part. Most of the times we include the conclusion as the last part of the discussion as a separate paragraph. Sometimes the journals may ask you to give the conclusion as a separate part, as a separate, apart from the discussion. After the discussion, a conclusion may also be demanded by certain journals. So, introduction, material methods, results, and discussion. So these are the four important questions and the four important parts of any study. And together we call it IMRAD, or introduction, methods, results, and discussion. Let's see what are the most common types of studies. There are so many types of studies. Scientific studies come in all shapes and sizes, to be honest. But there are a few types which are commonly done, and the focus in this slide will be on those only. So it's not It's not an exhaustive list of types of studies, but actually a list of more common types of studies seen in clinical scientific studies, most commonly. So basically, there could be either observational studies or interventional studies. The observational studies are the ones where the the person who is studying, the person who is conducting that research study is actually observing what is happening around. So there is no intervention. If an intervention is made, that becomes an interventional or experimental study. The observational studies could be cross-sectional studies where a cross-section of a population or a sample of population is explored in terms of certain burning questions maybe. Then a case control study where the cases such as the diseased population is compared with a matching control population, and then exploration is made so as to just to understand what are or what could be the common reasons or the differences between the cases and the controls, because this will help determine the underlying causes of that particular problem or disease. There may be a cohort studies as well. The cohort studies are the ones where two or more groups are followed, and each of these groups, each one of these groups is actually a unique group in terms of the exposure to a particular predisposing factor, a particular pathogen, a particular drug, or any exposure in that regard. And the last would be a descriptive study. For example, the surveys. There are many types of descriptive studies as well, but usually they are surveys, which could be an example. So cross-sectional studies where someone would like to see the relevant factors in a slice of time, right? So it's just a cross-section. It does not give you causality. It does not give you an idea what led to what. They just give you association that, well, these are the problems, and along with these problems, these are the factors which were observed. So cross-sectional studies. The case control studies where the cases, the diseased persons, the ones who have used a drug, the ones who were exposed to a pathogen, the ones who were exposed to a particular situation, they are compared to the ones who are not exposed to. All right, and then the scientist, the explorer, actually tries to figure out what are the basic differences between the two groups. The cohort is a similar approach, but in the other way around, where instead of tracing it back from the outcome to the exposure, one explores from exposure to the outcome. So cohort studies. Descriptive, on the other hand, as I said, are the ones which just are described, and they include the surveys. And there are other types as well, but surveys are the most common type of descriptive observational studies. On the other hand, the interventional studies could be either quasi-experimental or randomized trials. Because quasi-experimental trials or studies are not properly randomized, that's why they are called also as non-randomized trials. Just to differentiate them from the ones where a true randomization is carried out, and two or more groups are made, and these groups are exposed to a certain determining factor, and these factors are assigned on a random basis. So randomized trials. These could be single-blinded, this could be double-blinded, this could be triple-blinded. Blinded is a way just to reduce potential bias. of selection bias and other biases. So observational studies and interventional studies. Now together these six are the bulk of all the studies you find in today's clinical scientific literature. So thank you very much. We are thankful for your interest in the presentation. If you have any further queries or any points you would like to discuss even in much more detail and depth, don't shy away to write your comments, your questions to the email address given here, and I'll be happy to answer all of them. Thank you so much.